welcome back, everyone. Interesting stuff to go into. I want to go into what's happening right now with McCarthy and him being elected Speaker of the House. In my opinion, most people missed why this is actually important. I think everyone's focused on, they tried blocking him. Oh, McCarthy represents essentially a different part of the Republican Party, and many people don't, I'd say ideologically align with that part of the Republican Party, more the old guard. What was missed is what we actually witnessed, which I would say is the death of the uniparty. The uniparty is now over. And this also, I think, addresses one of the key questions people had. Will Trump run as a third party? Will the Republicans allow Trump to run as a third party? What happened behind the scenes, where Trump ended up actually backing McCarthy, the 20 holdouts of the Republicans agreed to let him through? That was basically Trump embedding his essential system within the Republican Party. And they've put agreements in place now where through a single individual, one member of Congress, they can actually begin a vote to remove McCarthy if he does not agree to the different policies that they're trying to push. What we're witnessing is a fundamental shift in our political system, at least on the conservative side. And I want to explain exactly how I see that unfolding. Also, folks, you might have seen some of the photos. In Brazil right now, you basically have a repeat of January 6th. It's January 8 in Brazil. Currently, it looks like the protesters have mostly been broken up, about 400 people arrested. But this could turn into something much larger, and I want to go into that as well today and explain exactly what's been happening. That said, folks, thank you so much for being here. Those of you on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, will jump over exclusively to Epic TV after about 25 minutes, so be sure to join us there. Those of you listening to our podcast, actually, if you don't know, folks, we do publish Crossroads also on Spotify, iTunes. If you want to listen to the podcast, we're there as well. But then, again, folks, thank you all for being here. Let's jump into the stories for today. I want to start first about the Freedom Caucus, which is going to be a name you're all going to become more familiar with. The Freedom Caucus. This is like the squad of, the Democrats have, where it's, pretty much these far left individuals, Elon Omar, AOC, these kind of far left individuals who, even though there's only 4 of them, really fundamentally changed the Democrat Party. Why were they able to fundamentally change the Democrat Party, being only 4 people? It's because the Democrats could not move anything without getting them on board. The way that the political system is divided in the United States, where we are essentially a 2-party system, is if you have naysayers within either party, when you have roughly a 50-50 split, usually no more than 1 or 2 people essentially being the tiebreakers. If one party does not have everybody on board, they risk having the opposite party basically win the votes. And if they don't have everybody on board, they can't do anything. They need to have their whole party on board. They need to have those 51 votes. They need to win by that, very small threshold. And if a few holdouts dig their heels in and hold their ground, the party's left with 2 choices. 1, do you ignore them and let the other side win and get nothing done? Or 2, do you relinquish a bit of your hold on things and begin listening to them and find a middle ground where you can unify the party with these new individuals who the establishment may not agree with? What we just witnessed was that process happening with the Republicans, specifically the Trump movement now being embedded within the Republican Party. This is the impact of the Freedom Caucus. This is why the Freedom Caucus matters. Let me go into this a bit more. Now, 20 Republicans. Think of these 20 Republicans as like the new squad. 4 people were able to change the Democrat Party. 20 Republicans are now changing the Republican Party. I think they knew they wouldn't win. Let's be real with ourselves. I think when Matt Gaetz was trying to get Jim Jordan in, when they asked who he wanted to vote for, and Matt Gaetz says Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump posts a meme on his Truth Social account of him like this, like you're doing the peace sign or whatever behind Joe Biden, like he's the new Nancy Pelosi, is he be in that position? I don't think they ever anticipated they'd actually get that. This is one of the key ways that politics works in the United States. A lot of it is basically like showmanship. A lot of it is messaging. A lot of it is making points, and a lot of it is kind of doing things to get attention in order to kind of, drive the public and public support in ways that you want to drive it towards. I don't think Matt Gaetz ever believed they'd actually get Donald Trump elected as Speaker of the House, for example. I don't think they believed that 20 holdouts could essentially change 200 Republican votes and somehow get these 200 Republicans, there's one of the photos, and somehow get these 200 Republicans to switch to like Jim Jordan. They knew they wouldn't win. So what were they doing? What they were doing was this, I believe, is they were making it known that they would not concede, that they would hold out as long as possible, that things would not get done and things would not move unless the Republican establishment, what people have come to call the uniparty, the party that tends to work very closely with Democrats, unless that side begins to acknowledge and address the issues that people care about within the MAGA movement, within the Trump party movement, or within what they call now the Freedom Caucus. Now, it's important to note that behind that was Trump. And Trump, in the end, was kind of the shot caller that got things to actually move. Let me show you a video of this where Andrew McCarthy himself acknowledges this. This is a video on Twitter, actually. Kevin McCarthy, I apologize. Kevin McCarthy actually acknowledged this after being elected Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy, who was actually previously, it seemed, very anti-Trump, has now conceded, and he's even thanking Trump. Understand what this means for the Republican Party. This is a fundamental ideological shift. Let me show you this.
I want to especially thank President Trump. I don't think anybody should doubt his influence. He was with me from the beginning. Somebody wrote the doubt of whether he was there, and he was all in. He would call me, and he would call others. And he really was, I was just talking to him tonight, helping get those final votes. What he's really saying, really for the party and the country, that we have to come together. We have to focus on the economy. We've got to focus, make our borders secure. We've got to do so much work to do, and he was a great influence to make that all happen. So thank you, President Trump.
You getting that? What you're witnessing now is an individual who was, again, got into office through the help of Trump, but who has essentially been let's be blunt, more of a Democrat than a Republican, in terms of how he votes. Let's say more of like the uniparty type, the type of old school kind of Bush era Republican who does represent what the Republican Party used to be. One of the big questions for the Republican Party in the post-Trump era, after 2020, was essentially, will Trump go to will he get behind the lines? Will he begin supporting the Republican Party? Or will he try to essentially run as a third party? What you're witnessing right now is that Trump has become essentially a shot caller. Trump has found a way to integrate his policies within the established Republican Party. And Kevin McCarthy is acknowledging that in that video, that Trump's policies, the movement he began in the issues that his voters care about, which now is most of the American voters, can no longer be ignored by the Republican Party. And the issues they care about are going to be the things they're going to be voting on, are going to be the things they're pushing for. It's not going to be all they're pushing for. But that side of the United States, the issues that I think, frankly, everybody who voted for Trump actually do care about, are now going to be things the Republican Party can no longer ignore. Now, not everybody's happy about this. Ilhan Omar, of course, part of the squad, she's on the opposite side of this, and this is how she explained it on Twitter. Ilhan Omar says, McCarthy just agreed to a deal with far-right insurrectionists that would hold the entire U.S. and global economy hostage to extreme cuts to everything from housing to education, healthcare, Social Security, and Medicare. Hard to overstate how dangerous this is. Essentially, what she's saying is that the Trump movement has made an agreement with the establishment Republican Party, and the policies that they deem to be so evil, the Trump policies, are now a fundamental part of American politics. Now, Epoch Times talks about something very interesting, which is kind of what they did agree to. And this is another thing that I think went over a lot of people's heads. A lot of us, a lot of people were more focused on the image. We're more focused on the spectacle. We were focused on the holdouts and the individual. You know, they had to grab a guy and like hold his mouth as he tried to like lunge at Matt Gaetz and say something to him. Matt Gaetz sitting there, you know, with his arms crossed. You know, that's the spectacle, right? A lot of people were just focused on that. But the fundamental change was easily missed. There have been fundamental changes now that cannot be ignored and are going to fundamentally change, again, the way that our political system works, at least in the House of Representatives. Let me show you something very, very interesting. Epic Times says, McCarthy's concessions to Freedom Caucus and what they mean. It says newly elected House Speaker Kevin McCarthy had to make numerous concessions to win over a holdout group of populist Republicans in order to secure their votes. Emphasizing here again, folks, they didn't just let him win. They didn't just cast their votes or say, you know, essentially just vote or say present so they don't officially cast their votes. They let him win. And they didn't just let him win without getting anything out of it. They made agreements. Let me talk about this. It says, here are the key concessions McCarthy had to make, including what some Republican strategists say is the key one, allowing just one member to move to vacate the Speaker's chair, giving McCarthy a fragile grip on power. He steps out of line, they'll start voting to remove him. It's going to destabilize the Republican Party if he does not stay in line with what the Freedom Caucus wants. It says McCarthy was elected as the 55th House Speaker in the early hours of January 7 by a vote of 216 to 212. While it normally takes 218 votes, a majority of the House, to become Speaker, that threshold can be reduced if members are absent or merely vote present. And six members of Congress, Republicans, just voted present, which I should note, they could have just voted for him. It wouldn't have made a difference. They knew he was going to win at that point. So why did six of them still say just present? It's because they're letting him know where they still stand. They're letting him know that they are allowing him to win. They allowed him to get his position, you see? They knew that he essentially, they knew that they could block it if they wanted to. But by just voting present, they stood on the sidelines and made it clear, I do not support you, but I'm letting you do this. And letting you do this for now is maybe a more accurate way to put it. It says Republican strategists say the key concession is found in subsection Q of the new House Rules package. It reinstates a centuries-old rule allowing just one member to move to vacate the Speaker's position. Such a motion will be made via a so-called privileged resolution, which supersedes all other business except adjournment. Anyone, anywhere, anytime. That's Matt Gaetz saying that. And he commented on the power this concession grants to members to try to oust their Speaker in a vote of no confidence. Attorney Jenna Ellis said, quote, this effectively neuters McCarthy. She, of course, represented the 2020 Trump campaign, and she said this further in on Twitter. The original 20 have a pact. The 20 who, again, the 20 Republicans who initially blocked McCarthy, right? They have formed a pact, she says, that if McCarthy does anything outside of his promises, they will vote to not retain, and he's gone. Out. That's the end of McCarthy. Get that? That's, of course, referring to the 20 holdouts I mentioned. Now, also, further in it states this, McCarthy has committed to giving members of the Freedom Caucus more seats on the powerful House Rules Committee, meaning the Freedom Caucus, which represents the MAGA movement. The Freedom Caucus that is actually not only present in the House of Representatives, not only just present in Congress, but even in local governments across the United States. This is actually kind of a very quiet movement that is taking place within American politics across the entire U.S., the new Freedom Caucus movement, many of which are just now beginning. This is the embedding of the MAGA movement within American politics. And again, now that they are even part of the House Rules Committee, and now that essentially they can initiate a new vote on the House Speaker, and essentially they'll be back in where they were last week, where again McCarthy doesn't have the votes to actually win. They can at any moment say, hey, we have enough people to block you and we have enough people to remove you. And if you want to get anything done, if you want to have any movement at all, you need to play by our rules. And the point being here is they now not only have them playing by their rules as well, at least acknowledging them, but even giving them certain powers over the government, over the way things work. It says another of McCarthy's high-profile concessions to conservatives, the Freedom Caucus, contained in the draft rules package involves agreeing to replace the current pay-as-you-go requirements to a cut-as-you-go measure. This would prohibit the consideration of legislation that increases mandatory spending within a 5 or 10-year budget window. Presumably, this is what Ilhan Omar is talking about, where she said they want to cut spending. They want to cut spending, all these different things. It says the draft rules package also restores a requirement for a 3/5 supermajority from a simple majority vote on increasing the tax rate. It's going to be really hard for them to increase taxes, in other words. Another win for conservatives who oppose Washington's freewheeling tax and spend initiatives. Meaning, folks, they cannot, as Lenin would put it, grind us between the millstone of inflation and taxation. Remember that Vladimir Lenin, the head of the Bolshevik regime, Soviet Union, right? One of his famous quotes is one of the ways to destroy the bourgeois, the middle class, one of the ways to destroy them is to grind them between taxation and inflation. We have both. We have inflation right now, rampant inflation. The Fed is raising interest rates, and they wanted to keep raising it at taxation. How do you raise taxation when you're being essentially, when your money's being taken from you through the process of inflation? Your money's being drained, and as Vladimir Lenin put it, that's going to destroy the middle class. The Freedom Caucus just made it so they can't have that other element, the taxation, raising of taxes, applied within that process. It's going to be very difficult for them to change anything, in other words, with this new system in place. Now, basically, what does this mean? The Freedom Caucus found a way to essentially, I'd say, heavily influence the Republican Party without actually gaining a majority within the Republican Party. They did not have to win 200 seats. They do not have to be the ruling party, essentially, right? This MAGA movement, this Freedom Caucus, this disruptive force that is taking place within American politics over the last, 6-7 years, right? They don't have to have a majority, but they had enough people, they found, where they could essentially pressure the party and force the party to acknowledge the issues that they care about. I will say it here officially. The uniparty, the party that essentially was the merging of the Democrats and Republicans, the party that I think the establishment wanted to roll the clock back towards, the Bush Republicans and the Clinton Democrats, who tend to work very close with each other and really vote very similar to each other. The uniparty is dead. The uniparty died last week. And American politics, I don't think, are going to be the same for a very long time. Now, that being said, some of the new policies are now being announced. And the new policies, we're going to watch new issues come up. They tend to debate the same things all the time. Gun control, abortion, these types of things, right? There's the main talking point, open borders and so on. There's the main talking points of the party that I think are issues people care about. They are issues voters care about, but there's a whole lot more voters care about. And right now, I'd say with inflation, with jobs, with, frankly, taxation, one of the big things people care about is whether they can afford groceries. The basic needs have become more of a priority. And they are now officially acknowledging some of this. Let me show you, and also the IRS, of course, targeting. Remember, they wanted to make all these new IRS agents. It turns out, they're not going after the millionaires and the billionaires, which Biden has been messaging on. They were going after lower income. In fact, some of the lower income brackets. They've been going after average Americans. And one of the first moves of the Republicans now under this new system is to begin going after that. Let me show you this video real quick. This is GOP War Room and Kevin McCarthy talking about his first move now as Speaker of the House.
I know the night is late, but when we come back, our very first bill will repeal the funding for 87,000 new IRS. You see, we believe government should be to help you, not go after you.
What a concept, right? Government helping us, not going after us. Those 87,000 IRS agents who are specifically going to be coming after us, those 87 agents of the agency that Obama used to crush the Tea Party using really underhanded means, those 87,000 agents are not going to happen now. At the very least, they can hold out on that, right? They can block it from happening. Now, it's actually not limited to this. There are a lot of policies they're going to be pushing for, and this is just the initial step, right? This is just the first kind of the very first week, essentially, of this new shift. And Matt Gaetz laid out some of the issues they're going to be pushing for. Let me show you some of these. This is Matt Gaetz on Twitter, and he said this. Matt Gaetz says, "This is what we've been fighting for." And Matt Gaetz being important in this because he's been kind of the front man of what is really now the new Republican Party, right? Matt Gaetz has positioned himself to be the front man of the Freedom Caucus. Whether he intends that or not, he has now become the face of it, which is why, again, we're mentioning him here so much. He says, this is what we've been fighting for. If you go into this document, it's essentially, I'll name some of them. It's a bill to rescind certain balances made available to the IRS, a bill to authorize the Department of Homeland Security Secretary to suspend the entry of aliens. In other words, forcing them to begin not allowing illegal aliens into the United States. A bill to prohibit the Energy Secretary from sending oil reserves to China, which I was shocked they were even doing in the first place. That Biden has opened up our strategic oil reserves, saying it's going to help Americans lower gas prices, and he's shipping it to China, which is buying Russian gas anyways. Hey, they're going to go after that. It's a bill to amend the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act to direct district's attorney and prosecutors to report to the Attorney General, maybe actually start prosecuting crimes once again. A bill to require criminal background checks to flag when an illegal alien tries to buy a gun, something you'd think Democrats would be behind. A bill to stop taxpayer dollars from funding abortion, something many religious voters actually care about a lot. A bill to make it so healthcare workers have to save an infant if it survives an abortion, something which many people may be surprised is not already happening, that if an individual has an abortion and the infant is, of course, able to survive, which, after about 6 months, typically they can, that they can't just leave it on a shelf and let it die. They have to actually care for it as a human being. Because it is, frankly. Issues now, they're going to be raised as part of the public debate. Issues that, again, we'll see if the Democrats agree to any of this, but as you begin raising these issues, it's going to basically raise those little soft points, right? Democrats now are going to be left with the key challenge. Do they vote against these things? If Republicans have essentially created their new policies, which is what you're watching right now. Remember, there's the old kind of talking points. The Republicans have now created the new policies and the new angles on those policies. How is that going to change the national debate, the national political debate? Will Democrats vote against all of this? We will see. Again, because it's going to depend on how it's messaged. Will Democrats look bad if they vote against this? That's going to be one of the key things to remember. Now, that being said, Democrats still have a majority in the Senate, meaning that if we're talking about the House right now, we'll cut to Epic TV in a minute, but We're talking about the House of Representatives right now, where Republicans now do have a majority. Keep in mind that the Senate is still controlled by Democrats, and also the executive branch, the president's office, is still controlled by Democrats with Biden. Any kind of bill that's passed in the House is still going to have to go to the Senate and pass the Democrats, and then still going to have to go to Biden's desk, and Biden still has to decide whether he signs it or not. Meaning, unless the Democrats can agree on it, and unless it makes them look bad, they're probably not going to agree on it. What you're really watching now is the Republicans gaining hold of the public messaging. If they come up with issues that are contentious enough, or let's say things that Americans might be shocked to learn that our government's not already doing, they can put Democrats in a position where Democrats, if they choose to vote against it, will look bad by doing so. They can also now launch their own investigative committees, something now starting up very strongly. They can also vote to impeach Biden, which, remember, Democrats did a couple times against Trump. They can now vote to impeach Biden. It probably won't actually go through. But again, messaging is what matters right now. This is about messaging. Essentially, what the Republicans can now do, controlling the House of Representatives, is messaging and blocking the Biden agenda, and that's it. But the fundamental change is the uniparty is over. That's what really matters as far as I see it. That's the fundamental change that has taken place. Our political system is different now. That said, folks, let's jump over to Epic TV. I want to go more into some of this. I want to show you, actually, let me show you a video after we cut, because YouTube is sensitive. Let's put it that way. Folks, before we jump over, though, again, I do an hour-and-a-half show. We're only about half an hour in, so come join us on Epic TV. Before we jump over to Epic TV, let me show you a quick trailer. This is Gordon Chang. I want to give some updates on what's happening in China because there is a new virus outbreak. I'm hearing rumors now that it's a new variant. We'll see what comes out with this. The CCP has reopened travel abroad, and Gordon Chang is saying that essentially what the CCP is doing is it is trying to export this. It is gearing up for war, essentially, and using this as a precursor. Let me show you Gordon Chang on this, and we'll jump over.
As this disease, as you say, is ripping through China, they are now opening up the doors to Chinese leaving country for tourism. And they are not sharing sequencing.
Is the COVID-19 variant spreading in China Omicron, or is it something else? And what does the explosion of the virus and the associated real death toll in China really mean for Xi Jinping, the author of China's draconian zero-COVID policies?
It's not just COVID. It's not just the economy. We are seeing the Communist Party move in a different direction from Xi Jinping.
Today I sit down with China analyst Gordon Chang to discuss the complicated realities the Chinese regime is facing. Why is the CCP collecting DNA profiles of Americans? Why are CCP-linked companies buying up land next to U.S. military bases? And is an attack on Taiwan imminent?
I don't know what's going on in Xi Jinping's head, but I do know that he's engaged in the most rapid military buildup since the Second World War.
Anyways, folks, an important interview to watch, especially as we watch things develop in Russia, and especially as the Chinese Communist Party is gearing up not only for a war, but is redoing what they did to us previously, which is they're looking like they're seeding the virus to every corner of the world. And what does look like possibly a new variant of COVID-19, which does look like it's actually causing a lot of harm in China. That said, folks, let's jump over to Epic TV exclusively. Join us there, folks. It's a great discussion. It's uncensored. Fantastic platform. I'll see you on Epic TV. And folks, thank you so much for being here. I want to go